Well, a healthy relationship is one where there's not only love, but respect and trust and support and empowerment. Somebody that wants for their partner what's for their highest and best self. And by there, I mean the partner, not necessarily themselves. That you want your partner to feel safe, to feel happy, to feel trusted.
On this episode of the Creator Community, we'll meet Dr. Laura Streyffeler, a mental health care counselor who leveraged her own struggles to learn, make positive change for herself, and now help so many others. We'll hear Laura's journey of leaving an abusive relationship with $175 in her pocket and moving hundreds of miles away to start over. We'll hear what the difference is between a healthy and normal relationship and the immense value in setting boundaries across all key aspects of a relationship, not just sex. We'll also learn how pornography and technology can impact our personal relationships and how to determine if or where they should fit in. And how Dr. Laura's life's work led her to publishing her second book, How to Have a Healthy Relationship in an Unhealthy World. Check out the show. Welcome to the Creator Community. This is a podcast for book publisher New Degree Press, or NDP. I'm your host, John Saunders. This show is designed to celebrate, elevate, and showcase many of the incredible authors that have published their books with NDP. This year, NDP will cross over 1,500 published authors from 6 continents and has earned the 293rd spot on the Inc. 5000 list. This is the fastest growing privately held companies in America. If you ever thought of writing a book but weren't sure where to start or finish, visit creator.institute to learn more. This is episode 5 of season 4, and today I have with me Dr. Laura Streyffeler. Dr. Laura is a licensed mental health counselor who maintains a full-time private counseling practice in Fort Myers, Florida. Dr. Laura is not only a relationship expert, she is a professional trainer, also board-certified expert in traumatic stress, and a diplomat of the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress, in collaboration with the National Center for Crisis Management. In addition, Dr. Laura is a credentialed expert in domestic violence and forensic counseling by the National Association of Forensic Counselors and a state of Florida certified clinical supervisor. She previously authored Wife Beater Shirt Optional, quite a title, There is No Dress Code for Domestic Violence, a book that dispels the myths and misconceptions of domestic violence. Dr. Laura, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
Really a pleasure and a fascinating story I've learned from looking over your book and your notes. Unbelievable. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear a bit more about your career journey and what led you to getting into this kind of work.
Well, when I was 14, my father took his own life, and my mother struggled with mental health issues. So I always kind of felt like pain sucked. And then because most of us confuse what's normal with what's healthy, and my normal from my family of origin was not very healthy, I got involved in an abusive relationship when I was right out of college and stayed for a while, and then left with a $175 check that I had in my wallet and 2 suitcases, and moved from Massachusetts to Florida and started my life over. And I really had no idea what I was going to do. I was in advertising back then. I started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, was subbing at a high school. And as time went on, I started working with victims of domestic violence because, again, our stories usually fuel our passion. You know, I had a very strong passion for empowering and helping to heal people. I've been doing that since the 80s. Seems like 100 lifetimes ago. And then I went back to school, got my master's. I wrote a program for teenagers arrested for domestic violence and their families. I've done work in the jails, in the projects, with the Homeless Coalition. I've worked in the fancy gated communities. I do expert witness testimony for domestic and sexual violence. I've been involved working with victims of human trafficking and the Human Trafficking Coalition. So I've been very blessed where I've been able to work with a number of different areas in mental health. And after I wrote the book on domestic violence, what I kept hearing people say is, Laura, I know about abusive relationships. I've been in them all my life. I know about unhealthy relationships. I know about assholes. Everyone I date is like that. What I don't know is how to have a healthy relationship. And I was hearing that over and over again. And then during COVID, I saw strong relationships get stronger, and then relationships that had a little bit of a crack just totally, fall apart. And the world is becoming more polarized and more isolated and more technological, and people are really struggling with how to navigate a healthy relationship, or really even knowing what it looks like.
A friend of mine said during COVID that we either fight or we get divorced, or excuse me, we either come together more closely or we get divorced.
That's exactly what happens.
She said it a bit more crass than that, but that was the message.
How I would say it too. But.
So there's this intersection of your personal and professional story that really, I'm hearing a story of that really came from a passion you found for helping and serving others, and then this message of you saw so many more needed this help of the second book and this healthy relationship. So you went on to write this new book, which is amazing. So before we get to that as well, how did you find the author coaching program with the Creator Institute?
I have a friend who had gone through the program and wrote a nonfiction book, and knew she was at my first book launch, and knew that, I had written a book. I really, at the time, quite honestly, John, I had no intention of writing a second book. And she told me about the program and Professor Coster and said, Laura, you have to do this. Well, you know how the universe works. Literally a week later, I'm talking to him on the phone. And 2 weeks later, the program started, and I'm in this program, and I'm going to write a book that I had no intention of writing or hadn't even thought about. So I had to think about, well, what do I want to write about? And the universe just put me there, and here I am. Like the book just wrote itself, because everything that I've been working with clients, not only from healing from toxic and abusive, and now the new term is narcissistic relationships, but moving forward, all that stuff I put in a book, which really is important to me. It's why I do so much speaking, because I've been doing this for a really long time, and I'm not going to live forever. And I want this information out there, because I tend to think of things much less traditionally than other people. And, I think it's important that all the perspectives get represented.
Sounds like a pretty powerful and broad perspective to have for such, arguably, I think, well, I don't want to rewrite your book, but pretty complex circumstances, right? Relationships are never quite black and white, right?
Well, that's the problem. They're not black and white. And, it started years ago when I was working with teenagers, and I would do the forensic valuations after they got arrested for domestic violence and other things. And, they would actually verbalize. Everyone wanted to know, are they normal? Am I normal? And my response was always the same. Well, if you grow up in a home where there's violence, or people aren't nice to each other and say hurtful things to each other, and you do that same thing, then that's normal, but it's not healthy. And a lot of times people's normal isn't healthy, but that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It doesn't mean that they're mentally ill or they're crazy. It just means they grew up in a very unhealthy environment. And, that normal for most people is different than healthy. And the other thing is, a lot of people believe that traditional relationships are healthy relationships. And the truth is, there are a lot of very non-traditional relationships. And in the beginning of the book, I list a number of them, which some might argue aren't very healthy. But as long as they're two free will consenting adults, and there's no coercion or manipulation, and it's what both people want, they can be healthy. They just may not be traditional.
Normal versus healthy. That is a really interesting contrast you draw there, because, right, we grow up in whatever circumstance we grew up in, and that's normal to us. And if I'm hearing you right, I think a lot of us just think that's normal, that's healthy, that's what life is. And clearly your research and work and life's work have proven far from otherwise. So you found this program through a referral, which is really interesting, happens oftentimes. Maybe it was Kristen Collins, is that the...
It was not.
Oh.
It was Linda Sather.
Oh, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. One quick nugget for people, as a obviously very busy person and very active in your work, how did you fit this into your life? The book.
Well, it was once, the class was once a week. So I found that time and created it for myself and the program. And it was really important. Time isn't something we have, it's something we make. And it was really important to me. So I made time for it. When I wrote the first book, I did assisted publishing, which was really more self-publishing the way I did it. And it took me about 10 years. I moved sentences around for 10 years trying to get it right. I had no structure and it just took forever. So having not only the instruction and the time set out and the deadlines and the sense of community and the editorial help was invaluable to me. I tend to be a very out of the box thinker. And, some days I can't even find the box. So having somebody to kind of help me structure my thoughts was invaluable. And the editors, if I picked on myself, I couldn't have done a better job.
Yeah, I think, well, congratulations on getting your first and now second book published, right? Sometimes I've met many people over my time of having writing and now coaching that say, oh, I'm writing a book. Oh, how long have you been working on it? 5 years. No, that's a writer, not an author, right? An author is a published person. There's a difference. So I love the context and the journey you went on and this thought you shared, which is we don't find time, we make time, and right, for something that's important to us. And clearly this is for you, this book. How to Have a Healthy Relationship in an Unhealthy World, due out this September 2022, wherever you buy books online. So, Laura, pretty compelling title. What's it about?
Well, there are a lot of composites and examples. It's people who have struggled where their normal hasn't been healthy. And they've been in really hurtful, painful relationships. Maybe they're shut down. Maybe they don't believe that there's such thing as a healthy relationship, or not for them, or they're not worth a healthy relationship. One of the things I talk about is we don't get what we deserve. We get what we think we deserve. And all the messages from all the people in our lives up until the point that we're at now, whenever now is. And I share composites of 30 years worth of relationship clients. It's nobody's story and everybody's story at the same time, sharing how you can go from having your normal be unhealthy and painful to working through that, and the way you can get a healthy me so you can have a healthy we, because everybody's always focused on their partner and what's wrong with their partner. You see that with narcissist abuse. Everybody's posting about, this horrible partner. But the truth is, the healthier we are, the healthier we attract. Our vibe attracts our tribe, maybe a little bit different, but we attract people the same level as healthy as we are. And it really talks about the difference between that fairy tale romance and living happily ever after and thinking that's healthy, where it's not. Healthy is a nice, stable, balanced relationship. And looking at the difference between a soulmate and a life partner, and really the reality versus the fairy tale. And there are a number of exercises that people can do, either with or without their partner, in either preparation for a healthy relationship or, with their partner to strengthen their relationship. But the one thing the book is not, it's not therapy.
That's a different animal, and that's right, spending time with you and digging in more deeply. But it sounds like a great roadmap in place for people that feel a bit stuck to start to rebuild and hopefully find a better place in a healthier relationship. So I feel like we have a handle on normal, which is what we know, right? And right, if that's all we know, that's normal to us. But what does healthy look like? Because it sounds like from your work, a lot of people don't even know what that is. And maybe I'm one of them. What is a healthy relationship? What do healthy boundaries look like in a relationship?
Well, a healthy relationship is one where there's not only love, but respect and trust and support and empowerment. Somebody that wants for their partner what's for their highest and best self. And by there, I mean the partner, not necessarily themselves. That you want your partner to feel safe, to feel happy, to feel trusted. And that you use the word boundary, that's beyond critical. that the boundary is respected. I always say the boundary, they teach you in kindergarten, this is, I think of it as a hula hoop, your personal space. And your personal space isn't only physical, but it's emotional and psychological, sexual, that nobody violates that space. And I think, in this day and age, most people understand that no means no when it comes to sex, but no means no in every area of a relationship. If the answer isn't yes, the answer is no. And really letting each partner have a voice, and where it's not just about being right, it's about being connected. People want to be right more than they want to be connected, because right now people are feeling so depressed, so anxious, so overwhelmed, and they're struggling, feeling helpless. So in order to feel like they have some control, they need to be right. And they're so busy trying to be right, they're not really trying to be connected and hearing what their partner wants and needs.
Wow. So want to be right, that we are more worried about that as being connected. That's incredible. Is there an example of a healthy boundary or relationship you talk about in the book you could share?
One of the ones that I use is somebody who's, trying to go on a diet, and the partner wants to go get ice cream. And she's like, no, I really don't want to. Oh, come on, let's just go. It'll only be a little bit. But, maybe I'm diabetic. You don't know. And no means no. And just because you really want an ice cream, it doesn't have to be a beer. People think, oh, they're in recovery if they want a beer. Would you push somebody in recovery? Some people would, because it's what they want. But if it's not what your partner wants, or it's not for their highest and best good, then no means no, whether it's a beer, whether it's ice cream, or whether it's, going to some location that the person isn't comfortable.
Sounds to me like your work has proven to you that we think about boundaries really really from a sexual perspective, and yet we need them across every aspect of our life. I really appreciate that construct. So, and sounds like a lot of passion and energy have come into this book and your work, and that's amazing. Your mission here. So you've been helping people deal with these challenges for so many years, trauma and heartbreak for decades. What is that like? How do you deal with that? How do you stand to see that much pain day in and day out?
First of all, you heard the beginning of my journey, but what you haven't heard is that in between my unhealthy relationship and the relationship that I'm in now, which is, almost a 26-year relationship, 24-year marriage, to a man who other people refer to as human Xanax. He is the kindest, most amazing human on the planet. I just adore my husband. And let me tell you, I'm a pretty tough crowd, John. I have an amazing support system. I have, the most amazing husband. I have friends. I have professional peers. I have a 22-year-old son. So I've been blessed with an amazing support system. And in addition to that, I've learned the beauty of the resilience of the human spirit. I've seen victims of human trafficking, victims that have been left for dead. I mean, just things that are unimaginable, physically, sexual assaults gone to the hospitals and the rape trauma centers, and just really seen some of the most egregious things maybe you can or cannot imagine. And some of them have been emotional and psychological and not physical or sexual. But to have somebody trust you with their pain is the biggest honor on the planet. Somebody being vulnerable when all the people in their lives, or many of the people in their lives, or the important people in their lives, have violated their trust, their boundaries, their body. And the fact that they trust me, life doesn't get more beautiful than that. There is no greater honor. And so to be given that honor, and then to see the healing, and to see somebody go from not only heartbreak, but unimaginable pain to healing, there's nothing more beautiful. And I've been very blessed in my career because I've seen it a lot. I've seen people get better and heal and move forward and, maybe not live happily ever after, but living much healthier, more stable lives than they either started with or where they were when I met them. And there's nothing more beautiful.
Well, first of all, it's so lovely to see after having some early struggles for yourself in personal relationships that you now found this really lovely, warm, and very supportive environment is what I'm hearing. And you've built this community, if you will, and family relationships around you to have that support to help you deal with this so you can go out and help so many others. And quite a gift, it sounds like you have to build trust with people because you're meeting them at probably the lowest of lows in their lives, right? When they sit down and see you, probably things aren't great for the first time, right? So when you think about some of those very painful circumstances you've helped people live through, what's been one of your favorite success stories?
Well, I remember meeting a woman. I had actually met her early at the shelter. She had come in, and then I was doing classes on domestic violence and sexual violence for both the men and the women at different times in the jail. And that's originally, I had met her there. And we were talking about trust and respect and, all the words that so many of us think we know and we take for granted. And so I was asking, what's trust? So my girl raises her hand. Laura, I know what trust is. And so I called her by name and I said, and she said, trust means being able to close your eyes. And, John, when I speak, I share that story and I can't do it without getting chills, even all these years later. And then after she got out, I continued to work with her and she went on to live a functional, I don't know that it was healthy, but she felt much safer and really grew. I had another woman who had never been, and she's given me permission to use her story. She had 3 children. Her husband had an alcohol problem. They lived in a very fancy community. He had never hit her. But then she said she wanted a divorce. And he told her that if she left him, he would set the house on fire with her and the kids in it. And I've actually worked with 3 or 4 people that have had their house set on fire by their partner when they said they would leave. So he set the house on fire and she and the kids got out. Nobody was physically hurt.
They were in the house when he set it on fire.
They were in the house when he set it on fire.
Oh my God.
And he was arrested for arson. And I'm getting chills as I'm even telling you the story.
It's unbelievable.
I have so much respect for her. So the first 6 months I worked with her once a week. She was pretty much an automaton, because she had 3 kids she had to take care of, just going through the motion. And if she felt the feelings, she would have fallen apart. So we just kind of processed it from the situation out. And the other little piece, I know we don't have so much time, but I have to tell you, they had the house for sale and then it burnt down and she had quite a community. The house next door, the people were living someplace else. They offered to let her and the kids live in it. So for a year, while they rebuilt their house, they lived in the house next door to the one that was burnt down. Can you imagine? I mean, I can't even imagine.
Wow.
What it would be like to have to look at that house every day. But they had such a community in the community. They chose to stay in the community. And then I worked with her about a year and a half. And he turned down a 17-year plea and then finally got much more than that. But right before the trial, she came in. I'll never forget it. She had on a T-shirt with the Incredibles logo on it. And she said to me, Laura, I'm wearing this shirt because I feel incredible. She says, I've done everything I need to do here. She was getting ready to move to another state and she had processed. She wasn't running away. She was just, starting over. She says, the only thing that's left here for me is the trial, but it's not my trial. It's his trial. I'm just a witness.
Wow.
That's how far she came.
And,
how much more beautiful than that does it get? He burnt down the house with her and the kids in it. And she got to the point that it's not even my trial. It's his trial. You know what? She is incredible.
Those are 2 incredible stories. I mean, to say trust is being able to close your eyes in the house with this person you're in a relationship with, that is mind-blowing, and to see that she was able to, through your help, get ahead. And certainly this woman, I mean, that story almost sounds made up to me. It's so unbelievable to think that that could happen, certainly on the front end.
You would be surprised how often that happens. I worked with a woman whose husband said if she didn't have the divorce paper, he used white gas. I said to her, I didn't know gas came in colors. Apparently white gas is more flammable. I mean, it's amazing the things you can learn.
Wow. And such learning you've done. And your book covers other topics as well, Laura, right? There's this topic I feel like we're hearing more and more about these days is narcissistic abuse in relationships. What is that about? What can you share with listeners about that?
Well, a true narcissist, years ago, they used to say 1% of the population they used to call it NPD. Narcissistic personality disorder. It's really a grandiose sense of self. It's all about them and really just pretty much use other people for just to get their own, not even needs met, their own wants met, and this is kind of a button for me because narcissistic abuse, really is domestic violence. When I taught in the criminal justice program at Florida Gulf Coast University, I realized, working with the legal system and the clinical system, domestic violence is different, but emotional and psychological abuse is still domestic violence. And really, that's what narcissistic abuse isn't in its entirety. But now you have a bunch of lay people who are just calling their relationship narcissistic abuse, which I'm sure some of them probably are. But just because somebody's an asshole doesn't mean they're a narcissist. And just because somebody does something not nice doesn't mean that you're in a narcissistic abuse relationship. So narcissist abuse is really when a relationship is just all about one person and not the other, but it's throughout the relationship. It's not when the relationship runs its course and you don't like the person anymore because they've become an asshole now that you're in narcissistic abuse.
Wow. I can't help but think of 3 clients that I fired over the years as a salesperson on Wall Street that I feel like you just described to a T. I mean, I feel like every meeting they had was, how can I get everything I can out of you? And if I help you out, well, geez, that'll just be dumb luck or some random circumstance. And boy, that was painful to deal with.
Well, it's all about them, and the other things, I have to tell people is if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. Narcissists come in, smooth as polyester. It's not silk, it's just, fake, and it's too good to be true until it's hooked in, and then the dream becomes the nightmare. And again, it's about balance. So if the relationship isn't balanced in the beginning, it's not going to be balanced as time goes on. So that too good to be true, now the new term is love bombing. Love bombing started, with the Moonies and cult, recruitment. Bombing of any kind isn't healthy. So people that, if you don't want the yuckies later, then, you got to be careful of too much of the good stuff in the beginning.
I mean, not to dwell on these 3 people again, but these are 3 people that were held. If you met them on the street, you think, what a extraordinary, upstanding person and well-groomed, very articulate, very nice, warm professional. But boy, once the door got closed and it was just you and them in a room, it was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of a thing. And that is painful to live through. And I was very fortunate to have the power to break those relationships. And when I did, I had these were clients that were giving me literally millions of dollars a year. And I had peers of mine say, what are you doing? Why would you get rid of those relationships? And I mean, to me, this was my rule of thumb. If I was thinking about you at 11 o'clock at night and thinking about you with extreme anger, that was the end of the line for me. I'm supposed to be reading a book and relaxing now, right?
It's not a healthy relationship, and it's more of a violation than a relationship.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, another big theme that you talk about in your book, Laura, is around cheating. What can you tell us about cheating and whether or not, is that something we can move past? Is that a solvable thing? What should our listeners know about cheating?
Well, I don't think there's a yes or no answer. I think it depends on the relationship, and it depends on the people in the relationship. I've worked with a number of couples that have worked through cheating and got to the other side of it, and the relationship was stronger. After an affair, people always say, I just want to get back what we had. Well, you can't get back what you had because you can't take that piece of history of the relationship out of the relationship. But what happens, again, we're back to that crack. It's either going to fall apart or it's going to get stronger. The work that you're going to do is going to make the relationship stronger. If people stay in a relationship, it has to be because they're willing to forgive, look at what was going on, work together and get to the other side. If I always say, if one person just wants to stay and continue to punish the other partner for cheating, then it's not going to work. That's just continuing to stay together. That's not having a relationship. Well, it's a relationship, but it's certainly not a healthy one.
So taking a step back, assessing the situation, deciding you want to stay together and move forward in a positive light versus dwelling on the past and constantly.
A lot of times affairs are just eye-openers to things that need to be worked on in the relationship. Somebody's not feeling heard. Somebody's not feeling validated. Somebody's, not feeling seen. Affairs aren't always about sex.
Right.
The two elements of an affair are intimacy and secrecy. If you have either one of those, if you have both of those, it doesn't even have to include sex. It's intimacy and secrecy.
Wow. Pretty powerful topics you're getting into your book here. Another one you touch on, maybe a bit of a hot button issue, but pornography, right? How do you view pornography? Is that cheating? What is the story there?
Well, I don't think people really care how I view it. It's more about how they view it. Pornography itself is not cheating. A lot of couples use pornography together, or again, it's the rules in the relationship. If there are rules in the relationship where one couple says, if you watch porn, that's a deal breaker. I'm not okay with that, then you're violating the rules of the relationship. And that's the problem, not necessarily the porn. One of the things I'm seeing with couples is one partner spends so much time, with porn and having their sexual needs met with porn. They have no desire really left for their partner, and they really kind of take care of themselves, and their partner's just kind of, left alone. Then it can become a problem. But porn itself isn't cheating. It's the way, it's used in the relationship, and whether or not it violates, the rules in the relationship. It's really important, John, before you ask me about boundaries, every relationship has rules, or every healthy relationship has rules. And, the rules are types of boundaries. And the thing is, it's really important to talk about those rules and know what they are, because what I see so often in couples counseling is one partner punishing the other for violating a rule that they didn't even know existed. People think when they've been together a long time, or they love the other person, that they become psychic. And, well, you should just know. You know me, you know how I am. Well, this is where, like they teach you in first grade, you have to use your words and you have to communicate and say it out loud. You can't just assume that the other person knows what matters to you or what's not okay, because, some of the toughest communication problems aren't what's said, it's what's not said.
What a powerful message. And I think at the root here, all these things you're talking about around communication, connection, being open and honest about your feelings, and finding a way to be together versus hoping that you stay together because you think the other person understands you. Another challenge I think we all face today is technology, right? We're inundated with all these screens in our lives. How do you feel about technology and relationships? Is it good or bad?
Well, good and bad are judgment words. I like to think of things as healthy or unhealthy, safe or unsafe, legal or illegal, because, nobody has the right to judge what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. Again, if you're more connected to your technology than you are to your partner, it becomes a problem. one of the terms that was discovered by a researcher, I believe his name was McDaniel, is technoference. And it talks about not necessarily the interference of technology in our lives by what the amount of time we spend on it, which it absolutely is, but the fact that, you and I, John, are having a conversation and my phone's going to ring or it's going to ding and I have to check to see who's texting me. Oh, wait a minute, John, I got to do this. So the interference is both passive, and active, and unfortunately, I see more and more couples that are more connected to their tablets, their phones, than they are to each other. And, in one of my chapters, I talk about menage a trois, but, instead of the third person being a person, it's a technological device, and it's ever present in the bed, both physically and metaphorically.
Wow. Just this past weekend, I was out at this lovely setting having lunch with a friend, and just behind him was a couple. And I don't think either of them got off their phones the entire time. And all I could think was, why are you here together? And it's not the first time I've seen that. It was pretty shocking, though, because it was it was at a vineyard, this beautiful setup. And here they were, not only ignoring this amazing environment they're in, but completely each other because they were on their phones. And I was just thinking, what is going on here? Thank you for sharing that.
And one of the things I see with young couples, because technology and texting is their native language, they actually lay in bed next to each other and text. And the first time I heard it, I thought, wow, but it's, more being able to communicate, and people aren't looking at each other in the eyes, talking face to face, connecting. It's more because they process their thoughts better looking at the screen texting than looking in their partner's eyes. It's really important to look at somebody when you speak to them. That's part of the connection, and that's becoming more and more difficult to do. When I do couples counseling, people are always looking towards me or looking around. It's like, look at your partner. You're talking to your partner, and part of it is teaching people to look at each other when they talk to each other.
Wow. Mind blowing. When you first started telling that story, I thought you were saying they were laying in bed and texting friends. You're saying they're texting each other.
And the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard it since the first time.
That is unbelievable. So Laura, you're someone who's lived through a tremendous amount of change in your life and continued to learn from it along the way and advance your career and helping others, which is amazing. How has the book changed you, and what have you learned about yourself along the way through this book journey?
I think what the book has done for me is it's helped me bring together a lifelong journey, both of my personal journey, my professional journey, my own heartbreak and healing, the heartbreak and healing of others. And it kind of shows everything coming full circle. And that, the importance of having a healthy me and being who you are and being okay with it, and not saying to other people, what do I think of myself? Really, they call it self-esteem because it belongs to yourself, and know it and own it and be okay with it. And then find somebody that accepts you the same way. So many people are looking for somebody to love them because they don't love themselves. And you have to love yourself first. It sounds trite. When I was a kid, I heard it. Everybody, you roll your eyes and it's like, oh man, but you know what? It's the truth.
That is a powerful message. And so amazing that going through the book, through the writing, through the researching, the learning, that you even learned how to coalesce all of these events, activities, themes in your life and pull them together even more closely, and now helping so many with the story that'll be out here soon. Any unexpected positives you found from writing the book that you thought, boy, I didn't think this was going to happen from a book journey?
Well, I'm still pretty early in the journey, but I think, my first book offered information by the time I got it out. It's not outdated information, but just some of the terms have changed. And it was just really very harsh and painful, and kind of came out at the same time as COVID. So nobody wanted to read about, more painful stuff. This book really offers hope and empowerment. And I think in the world that we're living in right now, this polarized, isolated, disconnected world, I think it's offering hope and a way to reconnect.
That's awesome. What an incredible message for people that have been living through this very bizarre period these last, 2+ years with COVID, being in these lockdowns, the masks, the whole thing. But is it fair to say that would be the key message for the book, or would you add more to that?
I think the piece that I add is during COVID, one of the things that I saw was people were stuck at home, not only with their kids going to school and work and all that, but you couldn't go shopping, you couldn't go out to eat, you couldn't leave, and people were stuck at home with their thoughts and their history and their baggage. They couldn't not look at it because there weren't enough places to go or things to do to divert those thoughts. So a lot of stuff came up about their unhealthy normal. And I think this book offers a way to be able to look at that in an empowering, hopeful way and move through it.
What a great message, because I think with COVID, I don't think it caused a lot of these problems for people. It gave them a chance for them to be more greatly revealed. It might be is maybe what I'm hearing here. So a roadmap, a message of hope to move forward and address some of these things that maybe we've been hoping would get fixed magically, but as you've clearly shared, not going to happen by accident, right? It takes a plan, it takes a mission, and it takes an effort from both sides. Well, Laura, thinking about this book now coming out in just September 2022, what's your biggest goal for this year with the book and what you're after?
What I'm after is for people to pick up the book and say, Laura, I read it and this spoke to me and this was me, or I did this exercise and oh my God, I can't believe the difference. I want more and more people to be okay with who they are. And that I hope that this book, my journey in sharing the book and speaking and traveling and getting the message out there, that it's okay to be who you are. And, with younger people and a lot of the things changing with gender roles and types of relationships and different things, younger people are becoming more okay with who they are. But some of those of us that are older, are still trying to be a square peg in a round hole or vice versa, and trying to fit in who we think we should be and instead of just being who we are. And there's nothing more beautiful than being your authentic self. That's what makes you lovable.
Being your authentic self, that's what makes you lovable. And of course, finding a person that's okay with that, right? And you said earlier, your vibe attracts your tribe. And I feel this message all coming together here, being yourself, finding someone who's okay with that, who has a similar feel and vibe to you and wants to communicate, have a healthy relationship. What incredible wisdom and knowledge you've brought to the show here today, Laura, when it comes out in a few weeks in September. If people want to learn more about you and the book, where might they go?
My website is www.drlauracounseling.com.
drlauracounseling.com. How to Have a Healthy Relationship in an Unhealthy World. Her second book due out this September 2022 and will be available wherever you buy books online. Laura, great to see you. Thank you so much for being on the show here today.
John, thank you so much for having me and giving me a place to share my passion.
The pleasure is mine. Don't forget to subscribe to the Creator Community channel on your favorite podcast platform. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to leave us a review. And if you're ready to write your book, visit creator.institute to learn more about the fall 2022 cohort. I'm your host of the Creator Community, John Saunders. Keep creating.